Okay, so I want to talk about something that lots of business owners will sack off. And this is one of those jobs that it does take a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of thought. And because of that, lots of business owners miss this step and they go straight in with sales and marketing activity. And they forget to take a step back, zoom out, and take the time to put together a longer term plan. And I know it sounds boring. I know you're thinking, oh, I don't want to put together a long term plan. That sounds crap. But this is one of those jobs. It's one of those jobs that it isn't necessarily urgent, but it's so important. Because if you miss this step, if you don't take the time to look more long term in your business, if you don't take the time to think about the order that you're going to do things in, if you don't take the time to think about what it is that you're building towards, the direction that you're going in, the things that are going to come in year 2 and year 3, it makes it very difficult for you to take actions today that are going to lead you there. And that's the main reason why you really need to put together a longer term plan. And I work with my clients to put together a 3-year plan. And you know what? Yes, of course the plan changes. Of course it changes. Things don't often work out exactly how we thought at the beginning. But if you don't put a long term plan together, the likelihood that your day-to-day actions are just going to magically fall in line with building towards whatever that vision is that you've got, the likelihood of that happening is really small. So by putting together that longer term plan, a 3-year strategy for your business, what that really allows you to do is it allows you to make your day-to-day actions lead to the results that you're looking to build over the long term. If you've got something that you're going to plan in year 2 or year 3, you're probably going to need to do some groundwork for that now. You're going to need to make sure some of your actions now are leading up to those things that are going to come in year 2 and year 3. So it's one of the best ways for you to guarantee that you're going to get an outcome further down the line that you're looking for. So reasons why I really want you to consider spending a little bit of time putting a 3-year plan together. And after I've hopefully convinced you to do this and shown you why this is such a critical thing for you to do in your business, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do it as well. So you can actually go away and you can use this guide here to show you like exactly how to put something like this together. So first of all, out of all of the business owners that I've worked with, there's never, ever been a lack of ideas. So I can work with people to help them generate ideas of what they could do, might do, want to do. But it's very rare that I have to do it. Like the vast majority of the time, and I'm actually struggling to think of a time where this wasn't the case, but the vast majority of business owners, all the business owners, let's say, I'm pretty happy to say all the business owners that I've ever worked with, there isn't a lack of ideas. There's like an oversubscription of ideas. They've got so many ideas, they're whizzing through their head all the time. That in itself just gets exhausting. So part of the benefit of putting a 3-year plan together is that you do this big brain dump and you get all of the ideas that you've currently got going through your head of the things that you've seen other people do that you think you might do, things that you fancy doing, things that you think will work, whatever it happens to be. All these things that you want to do in your business, all these things that you want to work on, by putting a 3-year strategy together, you can brain dump all of that out. You can empty everything out of your head. And what that then allows you to do is it allows you to bring some logic to the table. And so we use a really simple impact versus feasibility matrix so that you can sort through the ideas that you've got and work out which are good ideas and which are not good ideas. And then when we put our plan together, we can just work on the good ideas. So it brings some logic to that decision making. And it means that we're less emotional about the stuff we want to do, because I don't know about you, but some days I really fancy doing certain tasks and other days I don't. And if we just worked on the stuff that I fancied doing that day, like that's not going to give me the results that I'm looking for in my business. So we need a more logical, thought out process to help us make a decision about which things we need to pursue and which things we just need to leave alone for now. So that's a big part of it. It's bringing that logic to the decision making. But also there's a big thing about when you do a brain dump like that, it frees up space in your head to think about other things. So there's lots of things in my business that I want to do that I am not ready for this year. I'm not ready to do these things yet. I've got other things that come before those other things that I want to do. But what happens a lot of the time is the things that are in year 2 and year 3 that I'm not ready for yet, I'm still thinking about them. I'm half planning them a lot of the time, and they take up a lot of brain space. So when we brain dump some of these ideas out and we take a few of these ideas and we say, that's not for now, that's for year 2 or for year 3, it kind of relieves a little bit of that pressure, because instead of you thinking about that thing all the time and half planning it and getting some way to executing some of the things that you're not ready to do yet, you can just say, when those thoughts pop in, like, I want to write a book, or I want to do a podcast, or I want to launch a this or a that, you can say, I'm going to do it, but that's not till year 2. I'm just going to leave it alone until year 2 or year 3 or wherever it goes. So it can be really helpful in freeing up that brain space, because it just means that you can then focus on the stuff that's for this period of time, for this year. So that's one of the benefits. One of the other benefits of putting a 3-year strategy together is, again, pretty much every business owner that I've ever worked with, they think they can get through way more stuff in a time period than they do. And that works for any time period. So they think they can get through way more in a day than they actually can. They think they can get through way more in a week, a month, a quarter, or a year than they think. And what happens then is we plan tons of jobs into the short term. We try and get through far too many of our ideas in this next year, let's say, and all it does is it completely overwhelms us. It puts a huge amount of pressure on us. And if we don't end up burnt out, which is where a lot of people end up, we're certainly going to end up really, really tired. It's going to affect our mindset. It's going to affect how we feel about ourselves and our business and what we can achieve. And once we start affecting our mindset, that's like a downward spiral. We definitely don't want to do that. So again, putting that 3-year strategy together allows us to spread some of these big projects in particular out over a longer period of time. And that gives us a much better chance of, when we get to deliver those projects, doing a good job of it, because we haven't spread ourselves too thinly. We haven't, that's the wrong way around. You know what I mean, though. We haven't smashed too many jobs into a small period of time. Because what happens if when we try and get through too much in too short a period of time is we just don't do any of it very well. So in putting together a longer term plan, we can spread out our big projects over a longer period of time. And that means we've got more chance of executing those projects really, really well, which is going to have a massive impact on how successful we're able to be. Another reason why spreading things out over a 3-year period is a really good thing to do is, when we think short term, the vast majority of business owners will go straight for sales and marketing activities. We go straight for sales and marketing activities because they feel the most productive. We can take action on them and we can feel like we're getting somewhere. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing, especially if you're in the early stages of your business. Like, sales and marketing is where it's at. That's where we've got to go, because we need to validate our products. We need to get some evidence. We need loads of reasons why that's a great thing to do. But it's not the only thing to do in business. There's lots of other factors that come into play when you're building a successful business that really, really matter, that you won't think matter in the early days, or that you will get so engrossed in your sales and marketing stuff that you'll forget about these things. So I'm talking about things like developing your skills. Like, when you're the business owner, you're your own boss, aren't you? Which is great, and that's wonderful to be our own boss. But remember, back when you were employed, your boss spent money, or no, hopefully your boss will have spent money on training you. If you're ex-corporate, they will have had a budget to spend on training you, on upskilling you, on developing your skills and abilities further. And now you're your own boss. That is your responsibility. So we need to look at how you're going to upskill yourself over the next couple of years, because the market isn't going to stay still. And so you need to make sure you're always investing in yourself and your abilities. Otherwise, you'll get left behind really, really quickly. We also need to think about how you're going to develop your product. I do a lot of work with clients to make sure that the product they take to market has been validated. I'm a massive fan of the idea of one product to one type of person, get really good at selling that particular product before we move on to something else. But when we put this bigger strategy together, we can start to piece together how we're going to develop our products and services over a longer period of time. We can look at how we're going to build up our, like maybe equipment, maybe infrastructure, that kind of stuff that we're going to build around us. We might not need those things now, but we might need them in year 2 or year 3. And they might link with some of the other projects that we're going to work towards. And it's important that we plan for these things, because sometimes, particularly with things like infrastructure and equipment, if it's a big spend, you're going to need to budget for it. You're going to need to prepare for it. We don't want to be in a position where suddenly it comes upon us that we need to buy an expensive piece of equipment and we weren't ready for it. We want to plan these things out so they don't come as a surprise, because when things like that come as a bit of a surprise, they can really derail the business. We also need to think about our people and our systems. These are 2 massive areas when we look at business growth. These things take time. They're not going to happen overnight. We need to have a proper strategy of how we're going to build our business from a people perspective, if that's the way that your business is going to go, or certainly from a systems point of view, and probably a little bit of both of those. And we also want to look at some of the operational factors when it comes to growing your business. So these are all things that when you're knee deep in sales and marketing, you'll forget about. And these don't need to all be massive projects, but we do need to think about how some of these other areas are going to grow and develop over the next couple of years, so that we can budget for them, we can plan for them, and we've got time to think about how we want to work on those projects, and they don't come as a surprise. And again, like I said right at the beginning, one of the biggest reasons why I really want you to do a 3-year strategy is that what you can do is, once we've put a 3-year strategy together, and I'm going to show you how to do it, you can see on the screen there the plan that I use. Once we've got that 3-year strategy mapped out, what we can start to look at is making sure that our quarterly plan, our 90-day plan, is in line with that bigger strategy, and the big projects that we choose to work on over a 90-day period are all leading up to the goals that we set ourselves for that year. And then we can take that a step further into our weekly planning, and we can make sure that our weekly plans, the weekly actions that we take, the stuff that we're going to do day in, day out, is going to push us forwards in the stuff that we planned out in our 90-day plan, which is leading into our bigger plan. This is one of the only ways that you can make sure that your day-to-day actions drive you towards your vision of the business in the future. And I can't say that enough times, that if you miss this bit out and you don't put a bigger strategy together for the long term, it's really difficult for you to achieve those longer term goals, for you to build towards your vision, because you're going to struggle to make your day-to-day actions link up with it. So hopefully I've given you so many reasons there why you should definitely put a strategy together. It's not that hard, and it doesn't need to take that long. And I'm going to show you the process now that I use with my clients to put this kind of strategy together. So you can see on the screen here that this is the template that I use. And on, I don't know which way I'm pointing, on that side. On that side, you should be able to see there's 3 columns. We've got one for year 1, a column for year 2, and a column for year 3. And down the side, I've put some suggestions of the kinds of things that you're going to want to work on over this period of time. We're always going to want to set ourselves a revenue target to go at, and also, at the very least, a gross profit target for us to work towards as well. So we want to make sure that from a sales point of view, in that sales row, that we've got a turnover target and we've got a gross profit target, and then we've got some projects in there that we're going to work on to help us deliver those sales. There's a row there for you to put in what your marketing strategy is going to look like. There is a row in there for you to put how your product is going to develop. There's a row there where you can start to build up what your operational projects are going to be, what systems you're going to put into your business. And, for some businesses, these systems could be like really huge pieces of software, like, project management software, or, whatever it happens to be, a great big CRM system. For a smaller business, it might just be that you want to set up a Calendly booking system so people can easily book in with you. So we've got a row there to look at from an operational and a systems point of view. What equipment, what infrastructure, what are we going to build up in our business? And we'd also include here how we're going to develop our people. Are we going to bring people into the business? Are we going to employ, or are we going to employ more people? If we're already an employer, are we going to outsource? How are we going to grow from a people perspective? And there's also a place in there for you to put your skills so that you can identify what areas you're going to upskill and how you're going to work on that. So that's what this plan is set up to do, for you to just in big chunks on some post-it notes, put a plan together of what's going to happen over the next 3 years under sales, marketing, product, ops and systems, people, skills. These are the key areas that you need to think about. On the other side of this planner, you can see there's space for you to create a 90-day plan. I'm not going to talk about that right now, but just because it's on the sheet there, what we then do is we look at taking some of those year one projects and planning them out for the quarter. How are we going to push things forward with those year one tasks over the next 90 days? So that's how we use this plan. Now, the process that we go through is the first thing that we need to do is we need to do the brain dump. And this is where we literally get a piece of paper or a wall. I mean, I do loads of stuff on my wall. You can probably see behind me. I like things to be super visual. And so when I do this process for my business, I will literally get a stack of post-it notes, and every little idea I will write on a post-it note and I will stick it on the wall. We need to try and be really, really specific about this. So when I've done this process with clients before, sometimes they'll write things like, get more clients, or develop my marketing strategy. So that's far too broad, they're far too generic. We want really specific projects here. So it could be write my book, it could be launch a networking event, those kind of things from a marketing point of view. It could be like really specific sales revenue tasks that we want to do. Maybe you know that your sales process needs work, so you want to increase your sales conversion rate from X% to this percent. That's the kind of specifics that we're looking for. We want to look at all of these factors here, not just the sales and marketing. What will probably happen when you do this task is you'll probably default to sales and marketing. So most of the stuff that will come to your mind first will be sales and marketing related, and that's fine. You get all of those ideas out on post-it notes. When you're looking at the stuff you're writing down on each post-it note, you need to ask yourself, could I make this a bit more specific? Is this one task or one project, or does it need breaking down a little bit further into smaller, some smaller projects? So that's the first job. You need to get all of these ideas out of your head. You need to brain dump it out. And like I said, get the sales and marketing stuff out first. That will start to come really, thick and fast. But then start using some of these other headings that I've given you there, the products, how that's going to develop, the systems you're going to put in place, the infrastructure, the equipment. From an operational point of view, think about how you deliver your product or your service. Like, how does everything that happens after somebody buys, how is that going to develop? How's that going to improve? Think about what you're doing now, and think about in a couple of years' time what you're going to be able to do. Think about the skills that you don't currently have that you're going to need. And these might be filled through you upskilling. They might be filled through, your recruiting or outsourcing or whatever, but let's get those skills down. So that's the first thing you do. Do this great big brain dump and get everything out of your head. You'll probably feel a relief of pressure to get all of this stuff out of your head. That's a feeling that I often feel. And I know that when I do this exercise with clients, they will often feel that too. But just the pure fact of getting all of these things that have been spinning around your head forever out of your head onto post-it notes, in front of you, so that you can see these are all the things that I want to do, and spend a bit of time looking at what the mess of post-it notes that you've got in front of you. You might sit and spend like a good hour and just properly make sure that you empty everything out of your head. Go and search on to-do lists. If you time block, I time block everything. If you time block, go and root through your calendar and find all those ideas. Maybe go back in your calendar and some of the things that you didn't do. Go and find all of these things that you spend time thinking about how you're going to deliver these. So once you've done that, let me move this along. Once you've done that, the next stage is to bring some order to this. And for that, I use this little matrix here. It's a impact versus feasibility matrix. And how you utilize this is for each of those post-it notes, for each of those projects, for each of those tasks, or whatever we want to call them, you need to give each of them a score based on the impact and the feasibility on your business growth. So let me just explain how we do that. So when we look at impact, you're scoring this from 0 to 10. Anything that's going to have massive impact on your business, you're going to score it like 8, 9, 10, that kind of level. If something's going to have low impacts on your business, you're going to score it like 1, 2, or 3, or whatever it happens to be. When we come to feasibility, we're talking about time and money. So anything that is free and will take you like 5 minutes, for example, you can score 10. So anything that's a high score for feasibility means it's free or extremely low cost, but basically 10s are going to be free things that take very little time. And as we add finances, as we add money to the equation, the score gets lower. And as we add time to the equation, it also gets slower. So anything that's going to take lots and lots of cash and lots of time is going to end up being scored a 1, 2, or a 3. I would really advise you to refrain from just shoving stuff in boxes, because you can see here by this matrix that I'm showing you, you can see here that each task will end up in one of these 4 boxes. I would really advise you not to just place them in the boxes. I would advise you to score it properly, because once things have landed in these boxes, you're still going to need to prioritize them, and the numbers you've given will really help that. So the boxes that we've got here in the top right hand corner, we've got the do first projects. So these are your quick wins. These are things that are going to have really high impact on your business, and they're not going to take up too much time or too much cash. They might take up a little bit of time and a little bit of cash, depending on where they live in that box. But they're things that, they're quick wins. They're fairly cheap, fairly quick to do. So that's the top right-hand box. You'll probably have quite a lot of stuff in there. Then if we move to the other side where we've got needs support, major projects, the top left-hand box. I've got my left and my right confused there. But anyway, that box that says needs support, major projects. These are tasks that are going to have really high impact, but they're going to take a fair amount of time, maybe a fair amount of cash, or potentially both. Now, these are really critical because we have to do these projects. These are really going to push our business forwards. They're going to have massive impact. But the thing we can't do is we can't do these all at once. Because if we try and do them all at once, you are either going to burn yourself out, because remember, these things take a long time, or we're going to bankrupt ourselves, because again, remember, these things take up budget, or potentially both. So it's critical when we put our plan together that we spread these major projects out over a period of time. And this is where that 3-year strategy really starts to come into its own. Because if you've got lots of ideas in the major project section and you're trying to get all these done this year, this is going to be difficult. It's going to take up a lot of time, a lot of cash. And that's where business owners run into difficulty. I don't know what you've got in this box. You might only have one thing in there, which, is slightly different. But usually when I do this exercise, most business owners have lots of stuff in these top 2 boxes. So then I'm going to go to the don't do box. This is the things that have been scored quite low for impact, and they're going to take up quite a lot of time and money. Now, some people call these like don't do forever. I call this box don't do right now. And I like to keep this as a list, because these are things that, yes, they're going to have low impact and they're going to cost too much time or money for them to get done. But that might change in the future. So when you repeat this exercise in maybe 6 months or a year's time, you want to keep that do not do list, because something might have got significantly cheaper. And obviously with AI at the moment, something that actually was going to have a sort of all right impact, like maybe it scored a 5 for impact, but it was just far too time consuming and expensive for you to do, might suddenly become much cheaper and take much less time. And these also can be things that you get really distracted by. So again, I like to keep this do not do list, because I'm just saying at the moment, these aren't right for my business. They're not going to have a big enough impact, or I haven't got enough time or budget or whatever. But that might change, and they might come into the mix at a later date. So just keep those ones as a do not do list. Then the last quadrant is the do second quadrant. So these are things that are going to have, they're not going to have a massive impact, but they are fairly cheap and easy to do. And I like to split this quadrant in half. So anything that's scoring sort of maybe a 4 or a 5 in terms of impact, and it's scoring kind of maybe over a 6 for feasibility, there are do second tasks. Okay, they're not going to change everything, but they're going to have an impact to a degree, and they're not going to take up too much time and money. So we do those things second. So once you have done your brain dump, you've got all of your ideas out of your head onto the piece of paper. You've used this impact feasibility matrix to start to prioritize some of these projects. What we then need to do is we need to take these projects and we need to put them into the plan. And this looks a little bit different for everybody when they do it, but as a general rule, how I suggest we do it, and this is how I do mine, is we start with those major projects. Remember, these are the things that are going to take up a fair amount of time and probably money, but they are going to change stuff. These are the things that are going to move the needle. These are the things that are going to drive growth and allow your business to achieve the results that you want. So what we need to do is we need to start off, we need to take these major projects, start off with the ones that are going to have the biggest impact, and then work through from top to bottom of that quadrant and spread these out over the next 3 years. I don't know how many you've got, but usually people will have 1 to 2 of these major projects per year, but spread them out over the next 3 years. Place them into the planner wherever they go. If it's a sales related project, put it in the sales row. If it's a product related project, put it in the product row. Wherever they live, put them in. Once you've done that, once we've put those major projects in, then we can move to the do first. I know this sounds a bit backwards because you should do the do first things first, but then we come to the do first things after we've put the major projects in. What we then do, again, only you can see what you've got there in terms of projects. Only you know what capacity you've got to deliver these things and what budget you've got. But then what we need to do is we need to take, again, the highest impact projects that we've got in that do first box, and we need to start placing them in year 1 until we get to a point where we're like, okay, that's kind of capacity from a budgetary point of view, from a time point of view, that's enough for year 1. And then we spread some into year 2 and potentially into year 3, depending on how many you've got there. Again, you're starting to build this picture up now in terms of what your business is going to be able to deliver. Once we've done that, we can then move and we can select some things from the do second box. Again, we want to go for the highest impact first. And they're probably going to live usually towards the end of year 2, year 3 sort of period of time, again, depending on how many you've got. And then whatever we've got left, we just place that on a do not do list. So we're not forgetting about those things. They're still ideas that we may pursue at some point if things change in terms of an impact or feasibility point of view. But that's where they live. And by this point, what you should have now is you should have a decent plan that's been thought out from a priority point of view. We've looked at the impact and the feasibility of these projects. We've made sure that we've spread things out so we don't get overwhelmed, we don't bankrupt ourselves, we don't burn out. We've built this up into a plan that is doable. And this is where we can start to see, we can do that quality checking activity where we can just look at it as a whole, and we can sit back and we can say, okay, let's do that final check over what we've got in this plan. We know what our goals are. We know what we're trying to build. We know what we want to generate in our business in terms of revenue. When we look at this big plan, is this plan going to get us there? Are these the projects that are going to deliver what we want in our business? And if they're not, then we've got that opportunity to go back and have a look and replan. We can also have a look and see, have we got the budget for all of that? Again, if we haven't got the budget, again, we can, jiggle about with where the projects land, what year they end up in, so that we can keep to our budget and we can afford to do everything that we need to do, or we can look at where else we can get funding to continue with the projects that we want to plan in. And we can also check it from a time perspective that we've got the capacity to deliver what we're saying we're going to do. So that's the 3-year plan. That's how we put it together. The last thing I'll just say on this is it's really important that you've got stuff in all of the rows. So if you're looking at your plan and you haven't got anything for skills, you need to go back and you need to look at, where am I weak? Like, what's going to hold me back? When I look at the projects that I'm going to deliver, are there skills that are missing? What opportunities am I not taking advantage of because I'm not developing my own skills? Because if you haven't got anything from a skills point of view for a 3-year period, you're definitely going to get left behind, because things move so quickly, and you need to make sure that you're current and you're up to date and you're upskilling yourself in your industry, in your particular sector. The same for the others. If you're just focusing on sales and marketing and there's nothing from a delivery point of view, you are going to need to find ways to improve how you deliver your products and services over a 3-year period. Like, that's a fact. Like, you're not going to be able to grow your business and just keep everything the same as it is now. So you need to make sure you've got that you've got progress in each of those rows. And once you've got this done, and I'm not going to really talk about the 90-day planning or anything like that in massive detail now, but once you've got that 3-year strategy, you should be able to see straight away how you can start aligning your shorter term actions with that long-term plan. When you put that 90-day plan together, it should be full of tasks that allow you to deliver on these big projects, because you've got foresight of that now. You can see where things are going. What it will also allow you to do is any projects that are in year 2 or year 3, you don't need to be thinking about them every day. You can, one of my things is I want to write a book. That's one of my tasks, but I don't need to be getting distracted by that right now. That's not till next year in my plan. And I don't want to get distracted by it now, but it pops up all the time. Every time I see somebody launching a book or talking about a book, I think, oh, what about my book? And I used to get really distracted by that, and I'd go off down a rabbit hole and start thinking about how I might do my book and all the factors that come with it. And I don't do that anymore, because I know it's in year 2. It's there, it's on the plan. I don't need to worry about it. I'm going to get to it in year 2, and it just allows me to knock myself back onto the stuff I'm supposed to be doing in this quarter. And you'll have things like that as well, where you're in year 2 or year 3, there'll be something there that you just keep getting distracted by. And once you've plonked it in year 2 or year 3 or wherever it lives, and you've put it there for a reason, and you've thought about it, and there's logic behind it, it just allows you to get on with the other stuff that you're supposed to be doing now. It allows you just to compartmentalize a little bit. And like I said, it's all about spreading things out so that we don't become completely overwhelmed, because that's a word that clients use with me all the time, that people are feeling overwhelmed, and it's because they're trying to do too many things in too short a period of time. And not only does that make you feel super overwhelmed, it adds all that pressure on, but it means you're not doing a good job of any of the things that you're doing because you're under too much pressure. So by having this 3-year strategy, you're relieving all of those things. So I hope you found that helpful. I hope you'll go away and do this. Like, if you spend a bit of time putting this strategy together, I would love to hear from you. Let me know how it went. I also have copies of the planner that you can see on the screen. If you would like me to email you a copy of that planner so that you can use it, you can maybe get it printed out, big style. Like, I have one on my wall that I have. It's a whiteboard version, but I can send you a copy of that planner so that you can use that, and the feasibility impact matrix that we've used today. Drop me an email, ask for my 3-year strategy plan, and I'll send that over to you, and you can use that, print it off, or whatever you need to help you get going with it. And I'd love to hear how you get on with it and how it helps you. So that's it for this time, and I'll see you on the next one.